Thank you again, and welcome to the NAGT webinar focused on sections, opportunities, elections, and events. I'm Christy Visaggi. I am a principal lecturer at Georgia State University, and I'm also a faculty associate in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and Online Education at GSU. I'm a past president of the Southeast section of NAGT and past president of NAGT overall as of last year. I'm currently a co-liaison to all of the sections, which is why I am leading up this webinar to help spread awareness about what the sections are, what opportunities exist in the sections, and some updates about things like the election process, leader transitions, etc. I'm joined by many section leaders, and so I'll have them have a chance to introduce themselves a little later in the presentation. Quick reminder about the NAGT Code of Conduct. As with all NAGT events, in person and online, we want to have a respectful, inclusive atmosphere for discussion. And so if there are any concerns about that, you can contact the executive director or the ethics committee. And there's a copy of that code of conduct that can be found online. The overall vision and mission of NAGT, if you're less familiar with the organization, is broadly speaking, Earth education for all. And more specifically, our organization supports a diverse, inclusive, and a thriving community of educators and education researchers to improve teaching and learning about the Earth. We have four main goals as an organization: to promote high-quality Earth education, to foster and disseminate research in geoscience education, to drive change toward an equitable and inclusive system of geoscience education, and to support current and future geoscience educators throughout their careers. And much of this work that we do, I think, as hopefully many section leaders will also agree, is that our community is amazing, and really having a chance to work together locally, regionally, nationally, make all these wonderful things happen. And so we're glad that you're here to learn more about this community if you're not already involved. For the focus of today's webinar, I want to promote knowledge about our geographic sections and ways to get involved, highlight the latest updates regarding elections, as well as opportunities for leadership. Share some ideas for activities that sections can do. If you are in leadership, you'll also hear some from section leaders about events that they have done in the past or may have coming up. And then give folks a chance to connect with others in sections. So I'll take a moment to provide a little history, and then we can get to the QR code and figuring out where folks are in respective sections on a Jamboard that I've set up. So historically, the sections have been very independent. They have been around for a long time. And so it wasn't something that, national had a long existence, and then through that came the sections, but the sections have been around and independent for a while. Through that, there's been varying activity in the sections based on leadership and different levels of communication with national. And so what we've really tried to do in recent years, we formed a section ad hoc committee to say, where can the national organization that is so strong and vibrant, where can we help support the sections better? There are dues that come to the sections from the national dues. There is reporting that goes from sections to national, and there's been a history of liaisons in some capacity who have helped communicate information between sections and the national office. What we've discovered is that previously we had 11 sections, which was a lot to help support, and some areas were very small and had trouble maintaining more activity. So you may have seen in the last few years, we had a realignment of section boundaries, and we are now 8 sections as the map is shown here. Most states stayed in a similar section if their section was active, although some moved slightly. Arizona joined the far western instead of being in what was a southwest section. Kentucky came into southeastern. Louisiana went to south central. And part of the reason we did this was to align more closely with some of the GSA section boundaries, as many of the NAGT sections have utilized section GSA meetings for holding opportunities and events. This realignment also provided an opportunity to consolidate some of the dues to have more in a particular section, since it wasn't split across 11 different sections, and have more people to help support, as well as defining more specifically the boundaries for the provinces in Canada as part of our sections. We now also have a new model of liaisons where we have 2 liaisons at the national office. I'm in the interim role currently as one of them, and then Mitchell, who is a CERC staff member in the executive office for NAGT, is the other, and we work together to try to help answer questions and support sections and foster communication between sections and the national office. So that's a little bit of the history. I have seen that a few more people entered the room, so I think I will go to the Jamboard briefly, which is what the QR code is. So I can also provide the link in a chat when I stop sharing. But what I would like to do is invite folks, and I see some of y'all are on there already. Awesome. Invite folks. I'm looking for my chat. Where is my chat to put the link? Here we go. There's the direct link to the Jamboard. I will share my Jamboard screen in case you are new to using Jamboard and show how that works. So over here to the left is a sticky note, and what I have done is at the top of the board, this is a map of our sections, so you can find your state or province. If you are choosing a section where you live, that is where the default is. However, if let's say you live in the Rocky Mountains, but you do all of your field work in the Southeast and you want to belong to the Southeastern section, you can do that. So the section that makes the most sense for you, if you go to the top here where you see 1 out of 10, you can scroll over and look at that, Craig. Nice job already putting on the Pacific Northwest. Find the section that relates to you, add a sticky note, and if you can add your affiliation, your company, university, museum, whatever you may represent in terms of your geoscience education work, or multiple sticky notes for your name, that information. And if you have any involvement in section leadership, throw that on there as well on your respective section page. So I'm going to give folks a chance to do that. I'm going to come back and look at the board later, and I'm going to return to the PowerPoint presentation and keep going in talking about updates to section processes. So let me make sure I'm sharing again the correct screen. All right, so thanks for throwing that on the Jamboard. I'm going to come back and look at that a little later. All right, so why do we have sections? What's so great about sections? Well, besides having a framework to organize many of our members geographically, there's a lot of utility in having sections as kind of communities of practice in a way, where there's shared interests, perhaps in sharing information related to field trips or localities for research. Certainly opportunities for place-based learning. Shout out to Steve Semkin, who I saw hop on the call. There's lots of kind of geo-environmental issues that may be relevant in thinking about teaching geosciences as it relates to the sections, certainly specific kinds of hazards or issues as related to, let's say, sea level change or climate change. Those kinds of things may be particularly useful to talk about at the regional section level, as well as perhaps other teaching challenges. I know in the Southeast, we have had some challenges with talking about evolution and climate change in different educational settings. And so having this community at the section level, having sessions and workshops sponsored by our section in NAGT has been a great place to discuss those kinds of things. Certainly community and meetups, whether online or in person, is of value to the sections. And then in terms of our membership, it really ranges. Anybody who is a member of NAGT can be affiliated with a section, as I mentioned, either where you live, which would be the default if you're in one of the states or provinces, or you can choose your own section. And then I think in particular, those who are more in informal educator settings, K-12 and students and 2ICs, sometimes the section meetings might be easier to access in person than, say, the national meetings that could be very far away and much more expensive to get to. So sometimes there's a benefit for particular populations in sections. Our sections also give awards. The Outstanding Earth Science Teacher Award, the OEST Award, and some sections give other awards as well. So there's also specific kind of funding and recognition opportunities at the section level. And then last, but certainly not least, leadership opportunities. I think for early career folks, for folks new to professional service, there's a great way to get involved with NAGT, to network with the broader community, both in your region and nationally. Learn more about the different resources that NAGT has and their programming, as well as if you are a section leader, you can help determine how to shape the activities in your section and how to use those funds to do the kinds of things that you and your fellow leadership are passionate about. So in that vein, I'll share just very briefly about my own journey into leadership. I finished my PhD in 2012. I started at Georgia State University as a faculty member, which was a very different type of setting than what I was used to. It was this large R1 minority serving institution where I was teaching track faculty. Previously, I had been at all predominantly white institutions, and I really wanted to think differently about how I could best serve my students. And so I tried to get immersed in the geoscience education community, attending professional development opportunities, different GSA sessions and events. And ultimately, I showed up enough that I was asked to serve in the presidential line in the section. What that involved was attending 3 council meetings per year, and also helping to run the annual meeting for the section, where during my leadership, we had our business meeting as well as social. And then I also helped to sponsor some particular sessions and field trips and create some scholarships for attending those for K-12 educators. Various sections and various leadership in sections do things differently. That's just what I did when I was in that role. I've also served as a state representative for Georgia and as the awards coordinator in the Southeast. And then after service in these different ways, I was asked to serve in the national office. And then, as I mentioned, I was past president. So really, my entry at the section level was a great way for me to learn about NAGT, become familiar with the community, and then that led to really, really great things. In terms of the kinds of activities that sections can do or have done, there's a list here. I've already hinted at many of these. Some are, very widespread across large Western states and might do more online. Others might be able to do things more easily in person. Some like to hold their own separate meetings and field trips. Some do this in alignment with section GSA meetings or other organization meetings. Sometimes there's been events at the Summer Earth Educators Rendezvous, and it doesn't even have to be in your section to do that. We had a Southeast meetup for coffee and breakfast at the California-based Earth Educator Rendezvous last year, and then awards and scholarships and more. So if you're interested in leadership, these are the kinds of things that may have been done or you could potentially do in the future. In terms of typical roles, every section is slightly different, but there is a main kind of executive group with a presidential line, typically vice president moving to president, then past president, of different terms depending on the section, then some sort of secretary type of role, as well as treasurer. These roles previously were voted often in person, or even way back when by mail for the sections. But this year, starting in June, these will be, if they are open, on the national and division and sections online ballot. So that was one of the things I wanted to address as part of this webinar, is that these positions now, to help expand visibility and access, will be part of the online elections every year in June. There are other roles in the section as well, such as awards coordinators, the state and province representatives, sometimes called counselors. Sometimes there is a media editor or communications or newsletters, or an archivist or historian type of role. Each section can determine how these roles will be filled, whether through an elections process at the section level or appointed, but those will not be roles that are on the ballot online, just the main executive roles. In terms of timelines for some of these changes, as I mentioned, now the online election ballot that you will get as part of NAGT membership will have candidates for national office, the 3 divisions, and the geographic sections for those executive positions. We are currently in the midst of starting to prepare those ballots and seeking nominations. And section leaders will tell us who should be on the ballots for their respective sections, but we're trying to help support and find more people if they need help in doing so. The elections will take place for the month of June, and then in September, October timeframe, usually aligned with GSA, which is often in October, but this year is in September. We have an online annual meeting for NAGT. This is when we have annual reports that are due from sections. We have orientation for new leaders. We make sure sections are aware of the web resources that they have in updating their web pages or providing copies of newsletters online or updates to field trips. So we're moving to this model where now all sections will be on the same time frame for both elections and leader transitions, which should really help national be able to support the sections in a more substantial way. As a heads up on the ballot, when you see candidates, they will have been asked to respond to prompts, as well as to update their bio in the community member profiles. There's an example of my bio there. If you've ever attended an NAGT sponsored event, or if you are a member, you have a place where you have a bio. So add your photo and update your bio if you haven't already. But this is what we will be asking folks for information so others can learn about them on the ballot. All right, so that QR code just goes back to the Jamboard in case we had any latecomers. I wanted to make sure they had a chance to access it. If you haven't already found your section, please do so on the map, since we do have some slight shifts in boundaries. And then what I'd like to ask you to do is respond to 2 questions in the chat before we move on. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen in a little bit. But the first question I invite you to respond to in the chat: what do you love about your region as it relates to your work in geoscience education? So just your region, doesn't even have to be your section specifically, but regionally. So take a moment to think about that and pop it in the chat. And then once you have given that a chance, I have a second question. What might you want from an NAGT section? I will add those to the chat again because I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right, some good responses coming in. See some common themes also in the geology where I live is very cool and excites students. And we're each very protective of our or proud, I should say, of our local landscapes. Awesome. Well, please keep adding your responses to the chat. Again, I did put in the chat, but the questions were, what do you love about your region as it relates to your work in geoscience education? And then the second question, what do you want from a NAGT section? All right. So I'm going to review those responses as well as your notes on the Jamboard. And while I am doing so, I am going to give the section leaders a chance to share a little bit about their section, who they are, what their role may involve, and advertise if they have any current opportunities for leadership. So I will share my screen one more time to show the folks who will be speaking and the order in which they speak. And I've asked them each to have about 3 minutes so we can make sure to get through each section to share. I will also put this order in the chat, but Joanna, if you are ready, you can take it away first.
Right on, I get to lead us off. I'll make it quick. Thank you very much, Chrissy. I appreciate this. My name's Joanna Latham. I work at Milton Academy. I'm part of this upper school science department faculty. My background is in geology. I worked in industry for the better part of 15 years, and I should say the mining and environmental and geotech industry. So more recently, for the past 10, 15 years, I've been in the science classroom. I am currently in a leadership role as an appointed Northeast Section president, following in the footsteps or trying to fill the shoes of Susan Maeve Kelly, who is currently our OEST chair. I'm still exploring what it is that I do, or hopefully will be doing. And Christy, I am looking forward to reaching out to you for some guidance with this. So we have meetings of section officers. We have a meeting actually coming up in the next couple weeks. I'm looking forward to planning and implementing some trips, and hopefully having a workshop or two to bring on and get involved some K through 12 folks in the area. And my area, by the way, is I am physically in Boston, right outside of Boston. So we have, as I put in the chat, we have a lot of exciting stuff around us that we can access in terms of geology to get people excited. One of the things that I have done personally recently is attend a GSA meeting. The NAGT had lunch, which I was not able to make. I had a sick child, but I did sit on a panel on one of the days with a few other folks from industry, government, and education. And we spoke to the question of how to address the need to recruit and engage new geoscientists. So that was really quite eye-opening. And that's something that I'm looking forward to bringing to our section officers as a goal, as a question, how can we promote recruiting, I should say, or engaging new geoscientists here in the Northeast section. So we have currently, we have 6 counselors, a treasurer, and me, and we have Susan Maeve Kelly, who's our OES chair in the Northeast section. And one thing that we are looking for, or that I'm realizing that we need, is a vice president. So that's something that I'd like to hopefully discuss, Christy, with you and Mitchell. Did I cover all the bases? Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And I will say that sometimes, because as you may have seen, there's been a trend in recent years with GSA having joint section meetings. That has been a great way for different NAGT sections to get together and do things. We had a joint Northeast and Southeast event previously, and so that's something to keep in mind as well. Speaking of, Mary, who helped organize that, you are up next.
Hi, everybody. Just 2 days ago, we had our annual business meeting for the Southeastern section. So hi again to Christy and Adam Skarkey, who attended virtually. We had only about 10 people come in person, and we have a lot of opportunities for new blood in the leadership. I am doing right now a kind of post-grad term as president, and was hoping to kind of help a brand new vice president learn the ropes and step up into president, but unfortunately she's leaving us. So we are also without a vice president, and very soon we'll be without a president. We also had a wonderful OEST awards coordinator, Megan Cook, who we lost to national. So she is still continuing to help us out a little bit this year, but we've got plenty of openings. We also do have state reps in our section, and currently don't have any for Tennessee or Kentucky. Kentucky is a new addition to the Southeastern section, so I'm not sure what their situation was before they came to join us. And we typically like to have 2 state reps in each state. We only have 1 right now in South Carolina and one in Florida, so there's a little room for people to step into a position where they'd have somebody to work with. So one of the reasons I got involved in the Southeastern section of NAGT is just what Christy was describing a little while ago. I was looking for a way to add some service to the profession, to all of the things that I do to convince my bosses that I am a good faculty member. And I reached out to the person who was the president at that point in time and was welcomed in. And why don't you think about being president? So thanks to Melissa and Christy, I have had a wonderful time being president, but there definitely is some room to improve the activities since that was during COVID times. And, I think we all need to kind of a reboot to get some of the face-to-face stuff perhaps going again. There was one other thing I wanted to say quickly, and of course it has flown right out of my mind. Well, if I remember, I'll put it in the chat, but it's nice to meet all of you virtually.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. All right, Steve, I think you are up next for Eastern.
There we go. I should be unmuted. Thank you for the invite today. It's nice to be with everyone. So I'm Steve Lindberg. I'm an instructor here in Johnstown at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown in the Energy and Earth Resources Department. I first became involved with NAGT back in 1992 when I was the OEST for Pennsylvania. So I've been a member since then, and I've pretty much attended every Eastern Section meeting since 1992, with the exception of when my daughters graduated from high school and we had a conflicting date. So I'm currently president of the Eastern Section. This is my third term as president. I've hosted 4 meetings so far. We had 2 here in Johnstown. Last year was our first in-person meeting held up at Ithaca, New York at the Museum of the Earth and the Paleontological Institution. So that was our first in-person meeting since being shut down from COVID. We had a very, very good turnout of over 40 people and a 3-day event with field trips or traditional geo auction, the award ceremony, the Saturday night dinner. This year, in 2 weeks, we'll be down at Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, for a 3-day meeting. We start on Thursday evening, and then we have workshops and presentations on Friday morning, a Friday afternoon field trip, and then an all-day field trip on Saturday. And we conclude Saturday evening with our section dinner, where we recognize the OEST winners and other awards. So within our Eastern Section, we have a really, really good core group of people that I continue to see every year at meetings since 1992. Within our section, we give our own, of course, there's the NAGT National Field Camp Scholarship, but we also give a $1,000 scholarship to a student attending field camp. That's from one of our Eastern State sections. We also have 3 of our own in-house awards. We give a Digman Award every year that goes to a person who's involved in geoscience education but is not an educator. We have a Moss Award, MOSS, that goes to an outstanding college instructor, a Distinguished Service Award, and then our own Field Camp Award. So I'm looking forward to seeing the online elections, because for the past 5 or 6 years, what we've been doing in the Eastern Section is we don't have elections. We simply ask for volunteers to take on a position. And traditionally, what we've done in the Eastern Section is if you host a meeting, then you become the president for the following year. That's how we reward you. So and especially since COVID, we haven't had elections. We usually send out a paper ballot with our section newsletters, all of which are available on the NAGT website. Callan Bentley from Northern Virginia Community College. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Callan. He's everywhere in geology. Callan is our newsletter editor. He does a fantastic job. Mike Baer is a high school teacher in Pittsburgh. He's currently our vice president. He will probably become the president in 2025. I will probably continue through this next year since I'm hosting the meeting. Our past president is Mike O'Donnell. Mike was at Blue Ridge Community College. Our treasurer is Renee Aubrey. She's a high school teacher in Westchester, New York. We currently have a publicity position open. Our awards chairperson is Chris Romiel at Westchester University, who handles all the awards and the OESTs. And what else am I forgetting? I was just recently at GSA in Pittsburgh and spent 2 days with Mitchell and other find people from CERC and NAGT helping out at the booth, and that was a nice, rewarding experience. So we publish a newsletter 4 times a year that goes out to the whole section. We also have a Facebook page. We communicate by email. I would say the biggest issue that we're facing in the Eastern section is where we are aging. And we don't have, and we all are, but we don't have an influx of a lot of new people. And it's been getting increasingly difficult to get our OESTs to return to a meeting. And we offer them a free meeting after they've been selected as an OEST. Financially, our section is, I think we happen to be very, very well off. So for the last 2 years, I've only charged $50 as a registration fee for the entire weekend meeting. And last year we had over 40 people. This year at Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, right now, I stand at 20.
Can I jump in with one last thing for your section?
What's that?
Can I jump in with one last thing?
Oh, sure,
for your
certainly. Go
section
ahead. I
before we
probably already went over my 3 minutes.
That's okay. I will say it again at the end, but the Earth Educator Rendezvous this year, the 10th one and the last one in person for 2 years, is in the Eastern section in Philadelphia in July. So something to check out. And I have an idea for a new person.
I'm going to encourage our members to attend that. Unfortunately, I cannot. I'm going to be up in Alaska for 2 weeks. So I'm
not sure people feel bad for you for being in Alaska, but
and I actually just returned 2 weeks ago. I just actually returned from 8 days in Portugal with my geology students. So we went from northern to southern Portugal in 8 days and studied the geology of Portugal. We take a spring field trip, and that's through Pitt Johnstown. So I'm trying to think if anyone has any questions about the section, but I'm going to say that's we have state counselors that I hear very little from. We have a 2-year college counselor. I think that position is kind of stagnant right now.
And
like
I am sorry, but we have to move on to the other
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
So I want to make sure we have time
my 3 minutes
for everyone.
Thank you very much.
But I have an idea for someone, so I'll connect you, who's a new professor in Virginia. Okay, so next up, Craig, Pacific Northwest.
So hi, I'm Craig Nickel. I'm the president of the Pacific Northwest section. I started getting involved in 2019 when there was an NAGT meeting up across the border here in Penticton, BC. And so we have a sort of second vice president to vice president to president to past president path. And at the moment I'm in the president. Crystal Huscroft is in vice president. Jacob Salander is from Highline College is second vice president. We've got a treasurer, Zach Sherrill, who's hosting the meeting this year, who's willing to come back, and Todd Redding at Okanagan College, who's our editor. I'd say generally we're looking for state counselors. So Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, happy to have folks come on and help us out with that. Generally, other folks have talked about what kind of a president does, but I've been involved this last year or two in the sections committee at the national level. So that's been interesting to sort of think about sections at a big picture. Traditionally in Pacific Northwest, our big one has been kind of providing that in-person, lower cost, local drive there for a weekend kind of conference that happens every summer. This year it's going to be in Yakima in June. So something that's lower cost, easier to get to. And it also serves to some extent for Washington, Oregon as kind of a annual meeting of a lot of the folks from the 2-year colleges to get together and sort of compare notes, share ideas for field trips, share resources. Since COVID in particular, there's been a lot of online webinars and fantastic talks arranged by National on kind of broad topics. So we've been thinking about kind of trying to focus on having some local speakers about local topics. So we've had some on landslides and on the new Cascadia Region Earthquake Center. We're also sort of thinking a little bit more around trying to get some sort of formal mechanism to share field trip resources that way. So yeah, sort of trying to figure out in a post-COVID, more Zoom webinar accessible kind of world, what's the real core of the section. And I think for us, for a long time, it has been that ability for folks to get together and see each other face to face and really kind of connect with people in the same region. Yeah. But we're
Awesome.
happy to have anybody come and join the executive to do whatever they want, members of the
Thank you so much, Craig, and much appreciate your help on the section ad hoc committee and thinking about all of this more broadly. All right, Sabrina.
It would let me unmute. Hi, everybody. Sorry. Sabrina Ewald, I'm the interim president for the new South Central section. We are just trying to build from the bottom up. Right now, we have at least one state representative except for Arkansas, but I like the idea, like other sections, of having 2 state representatives for each of the states. And we would like to try to just find ways of connecting the members in the section so that more involvement and trying to do things that are more regional within the section. There was a lot of interest from the state reps that I've been talking, that I have right now, that are helping, that doing things that are closer to their state will help motivate people to become a little bit more involved. And we're all very passionate about increasing the K-12 presence in NAGT and in our section. I'm a former teacher. I just left the classroom last year after 23 years and love developing earth science education, geoscience education, and getting more teachers involved in NAGT. Had a lot of fun going through the OEST process. It was kind of surreal since I was chosen as OEST many years ago. But like I said, we're building, so we're welcoming everyone who has interest in helping build the section and having more activity going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Mary, can you speak a little about the Rocky Mountain and your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, I'm Mary Kozlowski. I'm part of the interim leadership team for the newly established Rocky Mountain section. So Sabrina, like you all, we are building from the ground up, and we've been led by Emily Ward, and she's been doing an amazing job, and also working with Cheryl Manning, who has absolutely made the OEST awards happen in our section this year. So thank you, Cheryl. So what we're really looking for at this point is we're interested in getting more people in leadership, like potentially VP president roles. We're also looking for state representatives. Kind of what we've been working on is reaching out to members, trying to get them involved with the section. And really, honestly, our main focus this year has been making sure that we got the OEST awards, people to nominate, and got those awards out so that we could hopefully increase visibility and involvement. And again, Cheryl has done amazing with that. But that's sort of where we are. We're very much in that building process right now. So.
Thank you, Mary. And Adam.
Hey, everybody. I'm Adam Skarke. I'm at Mississippi State University, where I'm a faculty here. I teach geophysics and marine geology. And I'm obviously being in Mississippi in the Southeast section as well, which Mary covered very well for us. Christy asked me to speak a little bit about my position, which is treasurer for our section. And I'll just say that being treasurer has been very straightforward. I've been with NAGT for about a decade since I started teaching here. And I think in the last 5 years, transitioned from state rep into the treasurer position. It works really well. We have our own bank account. We get our regular dues from the national. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the treasurer position to help guide and think about how we spend money as a section. And I know one of the things we're focusing on in the Southeast is sort of expanding. Well, our treasury is pretty robust right now, so we're thinking about ways we can leverage that to do things like all the great scholarships and awards that Steve mentioned that the Northeast does. I think we'd like to model some of that for the Southeast. Being a treasurer is very straightforward. It's you're responsible obviously for managing the account, paying any invoices that are incurred by the section, and doing obviously the annual financial reporting. But it's all pretty straightforward, and it's a good way to interact with the rest of the group. And I'll just mention, I know as the elections are coming up here in June, if you in any of your sections have folks, if you have any vacancies and you have folks who are thinking about being a treasurer and they have questions about how it's run, how we do it, you know, how to do that job as an officer for a section, feel free to have them reach out to me. I'd be happy to share what my experience is and what I know to for anyone who might be thinking about that position in one of your sections.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. And I will add that now there are 2 options for treasurers. You can have your own bank account in the section, or NAGT can hold the funds, and National can work with you if that makes things a little easier. So different sections, there's some flexibility with how people want to do it. And last but certainly not least, Cheryl Manning to talk about OESTs.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Manning. I am a retired K-12 teacher. I was in the high school classroom for 25 years. Went back, got my PhD, and now I'm working. I started my own business doing education research and consulting in the geosciences. I've been involved in NAGT. I was trying to find out when I started. I don't know when I started. It was a long, long time ago. I am a former OEST, which got me looped in to be the OEST coordinator for the Southwest section in the teens. And then I took a break from all of that while I was working on my PhD, and I started, there was kind of a call out from Mary and Emily to see if I would be interested in working on OESTs for the new Rocky Mountain section. And what I found is that in the new sections, there's some confusion about, because in some of us share states, which is a little tricky. So for example, Rocky Mountain and the North Central share North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. And then we share a little bit of Texas with the South Central. And so that makes things a little bit more interesting. I think the thing about the OEST is that if you can find somebody who's willing to put some longevity into it and just have that be how they're working with this, it helps to create a smoother process. So I knew what the process was before. That process changed a little bit, but not so much that I didn't know how to make it work. We had a great group of people who reviewed those, and we were able to settle in. It was quite unanimous on who we were. So the new process for OESTs is very straightforward. I encourage you, if you are just starting to think about getting involved in a section, it's a great way to sort of see how processes can be managed. And it's intense for a short period of time. So it's not like a huge thing for a long period of time. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yep.
And so I am going to take us back to my presentation and thank again all the section leaders for sharing about their different roles and different sections. We didn't have anybody able to join today from the Far West section. There are a few people in different offices there. In North Central, we are also looking to rebuild. So that is a big opportunity. There's a lot of people active in geoscience education there who regularly present at section GSAs and things like that, or serve in the national office, but we are seeking more leadership for sure in the section level. So just with our last kind of remaining time, I wanted to open it up to questions. If people had questions about particular sections or roles or anything else. I wanted to also be sure to say again, thank you to section leaders and everybody else who has attended. And if you're not familiar with NAGT, to please join. And consider attending some of the events in the future. I know that Ashley needs a little bit of time at the end as well, but Mary, I see you have a question.
I do. So I know some of us call them state representatives and some of us call them state councilors. Could you just very quickly talk about what those people do for anybody who might be interested?
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention that. So the state rep, province councilor positions I like to say they like keep an ear to the ground as to what's going on in their state, sharing that with others, making sure that they are communicating back to different groups within their state, what is going on with NAGT. Are there opportunities for the national office, from the section, that might be of interest to share with, the communities in your state, whether it's at institutions, K-12, through other organizations like the Science Teacher Associations in the states. They also can help with the OAST awards in advertising for nominations and helping in select winners. So I think state reps have a range of things that they can do, but then there's just generally at a basic level, kind of keeping in touch and representing what's going on with their state and communicating to their state what's going on with NAGT. I see another question in the chat. How do we reach out if you're interested? So you can always contact me if you like, and I can connect you directly to folks. So I'll put my email in the chat. But also, if you happen to know your section leader, you can look on the web pages of the NAGT website and see information for different section leaders. I think, are you in Idaho? What state are you? Or no?
I'm North Dakota.
You're North Dakota, just kidding. It says Dakota right there. I don't know why I thought Idaho. Yeah, so contact me because North Central is a bit of a different situation since it's a building one versus an active section. So you can start with me. Other questions from folks? All right, well then I yield to Ashley if they want to share anything here at the end, if there are no more questions. And
Yes.
always feel free to follow up with me if you do have any questions.
Yes, definitely. And I'm just sending the evaluation for today's webinar in the chat. If you would like to receive the certificate of attendance, you'll have to complete the evaluation in order to get to that. So I'll go ahead and do our little closing for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending the NAGT sections, opportunities, elections, and events webinar today. You'll be able to find resources in the recording on the webinar page. I'll send an email out when that's posted. Please hold tight for a few days. We submit the recording for captioning so that it's more accessible. And then on my side here, we have a link to the web series homepage where you can find the webinar schedule and archives of past webinars if you want to check out anything that has happened in the past. We also have a list of the sponsoring projects and programs along the bottom. Please keep an eye out for our next webinar. We have a few that we're planning for next month that haven't quite been made public yet. And thank you again to everyone for attending, and an extra thank you for Christy and all of the section leaders.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for all of your help in getting this going, and